quite an interesting approach to content output. So they put out, I think it's something like 1,500 bits of content every week.
Damn.
They average like 200 bits of content a day.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Pundit Podcast, the show for people shaping the future of sport. Driven by my curiosity working in the industry, I've brought together leading executives to host conversations with decision makers across innovation, marketing, media, finance, and performance, unpacking their strategies and industry-shaping ideas.
Okay, let's see where to start. Okay, my first idea was for a team. And do you know there's a lot of talk around like, should you be posting the score on social? Like, what should your social strategy be? Do you need to be posting score and game updates? Are fans getting it from your Twitter versus anything else across the internet? And I was thinking about it and I was like, what if you absolutely blew up your social team and social strategy and basically got rid of almost everyone? You have a few people internally, but your entire social strategy is led by a rotating cast of creators that are fans of your team. So like they're in charge of the storytelling around, call it a month or a week or a game, and you have the resources that they can tap into and use however you like, but you don't have a dedicated social team with a longer term strategy across a season or whatever. You basically say, over the course of a year, we're going to have 5 different heads of social, and it's creators A, B, C, and D, E, and they are going to lead our content strategy. And like every time it's completely up to them how they handle it, whether it's sideline reporting or like shoulder stuff throughout the week, etc. And the idea is to just like, obviously every team wants to build out more and more content studios. And I was like, let's flip that on its head. Instead of building a bunch of stuff internally, what if you just completely outsourced it and just completely allowed a creator to take over your social for a set period of time?
Okay, I guess the first question I would have, having not worked on the social side, maybe you can give a little bit of a rundown of what like a typical social media team looks like within a sports organization or franchise.
So I haven't worked on a social team in a while. This was now 9 years ago. We were very small and we were built from the ground up when I was there at a Major League Soccer team. So it's obviously NFL and NBA teams are much bigger. Even college sports have much bigger operations than I was used to at the time. But in theory, you have a group of producers. You have someone managing an app and or a website. You have a bunch of probably freelance game day videography and photography staff. And then some teams separate that by platform, some don't. That's a whole separate debate, I think. And you're capturing stories throughout the week, whether that's BTS from training or player interviews, or whether it's outside of the general week-to-week stuff. You have jersey reveals and schedule reveals and new player signings and all that kind of stuff. You're all tasked with producing creative ways to not only engage your fans, but also probably sell tickets. And you're usually structured in a team of producers, like call it platform managers, and maybe a few strategists, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. And then in terms of like bringing in, let's say, a fan or a creator to be head of content, I guess, for, I don't know, let's say 20% of the season, right? If you've got 5, which parts do they take on? Like, are you suggesting that this idea is interesting because it would like save teams on cost, or are you suggesting it's interesting because you would end up with like very alternate views on like creative direction throughout the season, and then you'd be able to like A/B test because you've seen like 5 different people run it in very different ways?
More the latter. I guess in theory, for the former, you could either keep the more creative operations type staff like videographers and photographers on staff and you're not saving more money, but you're just changing direction. Or you have people come in with their own production teams and do it completely their own style with their own people. But in my head, I was thinking it would be more a fun way to see what resonates while also outsourcing some creative production.
I mean, I think it would be interesting to explore it. I guess the challenge would be like, what's the action point after one season, right? Like, is it a case of like you're trialing 5 directions and then like the one that performs the best you're going to go all in on? Or is it a case of like you just continue to then rotate forever every season with different creators?
In my head, I was almost thinking it's like a miniature slice of when you get the celebrity as the, hey, they're the creative director of X brand, and you get some limited edition drops out of it. And you do, it's like a bit more headliney and buzzy. In theory, you can go throughout this process to find one person that is a longer term, like head of creative, and you get to piggyback off of a big creator in a longer term way, which could be cool. Or it becomes a thing and every year, whether they're medium to small influencers that are creators that are fans of the team, or really big ones with built out production staff on their own, it becomes a fun way to activate and showcase the brand. It'd be a little similar to like when I was back at DC United, we used to do fan submitted match day covers and designs. And you're sort of blowing that out a bit. Obviously, you're never going to have a head of creative and just use fan designs always. There's still plenty of other stuff you need, but there could be something cool around it becoming almost like I would love to be a partner with the team for a short period of time. It's easy, it's executable, it's feasible. I don't have to sign up for an entire year. I am a fan of the team, and it becomes a really fun way to, everybody always sees celebrities with random team scarves and stuff, but there's a way to actually get some creativity behind it, which could be cool.
Yeah. No, I think it could be. I think in terms of actioning it as well, like it would be interesting if you could have a situation where basically you have multiple creators applying, and then essentially you just give lots of different approved creators like admin access, basically.
Exactly.
So like we'll be creating content. Because the other thing is like with the way that it's become a lot less about curating a feed and much more just like some stuff will appear in different people's algorithms. And so actually you could be putting out like vastly different takes on the same thing from multiple creators at once, rather than them having like one go each. It could be that you have 5 creative directors all running in parallel, and actually like what people see in their feed is based on the stuff from that account that works for.
Totally. It's very similar to the point that I was saying before of like, I think the days are over of no one live, or maybe plenty of people still do, but you don't really need to live tweet your game anymore. Like that's not accomplishing much, but you're competing for attention with a lot of other, not only rights holders, but just like content producers in general. And one person who may not even know the sport that well, covering it for a few months could bring in a bunch of new fans in a really fun way. Now, of course, you probably can't alienate them after that if they're interested in that style of coverage, but like you're going to learn a lot and definitely expose yourself to a lot more fans than you would otherwise.
This isn't a department I've been that close to, but obviously we've been working fairly close with the Juventus recently, and they have quite an interesting approach to content output. So they put out, I think it's something like 1,500 bits of content every week.
Damn.
They average like 200 bits of content a day. So if you go on their Instagram and you scroll down and keep scrolling, and then you click on a post, it's like, this post was from 2 days ago or like a day ago. And you're like, really? But their approach is very much like feed the algorithm, put out lots of stuff. No one's going to see all of it. So you just need to like keep putting out content in different variations and styles. And then they also have something called the Creator Lab, which produces kind of like more bespoke content. but also they've hired in content creators in-house. So there's like a content creator called Celine who does a lot of like football content, and she bases herself out of Juventus's creator lab, and they basically give her access and she creates a lot of content for her own channels, but then often it will be like co-posted with Juventus. And I guess the trade-off for her is by working with them more closely, she gets additional access to the players, to the facilities to create content, and they benefit.
Is she a football creator?
Yeah. Yeah, she creates a lot of like TikTok videos and also puts them onto like YouTube shorts and Instagram reels and stuff. If you see one of her videos, I'm sure you'll recognize her because she just appears in like so much football content. But yeah, that's essentially, I think, probably the closest from a club perspective that I can think of somebody already sort of doing this. Obviously, they're doing it with like highly recognized creators rather than fans, but it's probably the closest I can think of in terms of a sporting rights holder that's gone down that route as heavily and like committed to it fully.
Yeah. I mean, to the same question you asked before, is their long-term goal like larger opportunity for, like you said, more volume and just getting in front of more people? Is there an idea to like partner in a longer term way with one person, or is there one goal for them to do something like that?
I'm not sure, and I can't speak like on behalf of them and their strategy, but Celine, I think, is an in-house creator, and I think they have other creators that they've brought in-house. I don't think that means that they exclusively create content for Juventus. I think they also create other content. Like I've seen Celine do stuff with PSG and Tottenham and other clubs as well, but predominantly bases herself and does a lot of work with Juventus. And I think the same is probably true for other creators. I don't know exactly like the strategy that they've agreed upon and like the KPIs that they're aiming to hit, but they have a serious amount of followers across Instagram and TikTok. I don't think they're number one, but they wouldn't be far off being the number one followed football club on TikTok, which is impressive, right? Because like Serie A isn't getting the same exposure from broadcasters. Obviously, they'll get visibility through Champions League broadcast, but they wouldn't be getting the same global exposure from a broadcast rights deal because generally speaking, like if you're a Premier League club, you're going to be at an advantage, I would say, because you probably have more holistic international broadcast deals. So you're probably just getting more visibility and therefore there's more clips to be shared across, or there's more interest, which is going to then lead to more clips being shared. So Juventus is having to create a lot of the demand themselves, which I think makes it interesting. And it's probably why they've gone down that route of like mass creation of clips. So I guess to add on to it or build on it, like I'd be curious to get your take on AI content creation. And obviously you work somewhat in the space of kind of like content creation, and a lot of the stuff you do on podcasting, like there's a lot of like clips that then get created to push out on social. I'm curious what your thoughts are on like AI content creation, but also AI tools as they relate to like content creation and distribution.
Yeah, good question. Let me take the latter first. I think up until now, I have yet to see, and I do a lot of research on this, but I don't know if there's another tool that's probably better at this than some of the ones that I've seen. Long story short, we're still using human editors for social clips. There's a lot of little nuance that we've found that adds to the editing of a clip to help it perform well across platforms beyond just a AI tool scraping a long form video and saying that soundbite is probably good for social. I'm sure we're going to get to a point very soon where an AI editor can not only scrape a transcript, say that clip is good, but also edit it in a style that is good for a TikTok versus an Instagram short or a YouTube short. We actually use social first editors for social clips, and then our long form is done by a more long form editing expert, if you will. As far as the first half of it, I'd actually say that there's a lot of work being done around, if you can include this in like content creation. I don't know if you talk a lot about this with any partners of yours, but something that's very top of mind in at least the media and podcast industry is the AI avatar of hosts and talent to be able to scale ad reads and sponsorships, because it's one of the only, I shouldn't say one of the only, it is an industry where a lot of the work is having to be handled by the host talent themselves, ad reads and things like that, which inherently makes it a little more difficult to scale sponsors when everything has to go back to your celebrity talent, if you will, right? So there's only so much time, et cetera. I do think AI generated avatars of your, I'm using the word avatar, I don't know if there's a better description for it, but like an AI version of a podcast host can put out way more sponsor reads and this show was brought to you by all that kind of stuff sooner rather than later, because anyone that works in media or pods would probably tell you, yeah, sometimes it's tough to do an hour-long podcast episode, 8 ad reads, etc. So I think that is the one that is very interesting to me and a lot of peers in the industry. I don't know if you've heard much about that or if that was on your mind, but that for me is for sure top of mind.
Yeah, I've had a few conversations about like AI twins.
Oh, that's much better than Avatar twins. Yeah.
From a slightly different perspective, but I think this perspective is interesting too, particularly as it relates to ads, because it then allows you to be a lot more. So at the moment, I guess they probably record a load of ad reads, and then the sponsor has to be like, yeah, we're happy with that. We're just going to kind of leave it that way for the series, right? Whereas I guess if they're able to just type something out new and just be like, oh, sorry, we changed the copy, but like the guy doesn't have to go read it again. It just kind of, he just says twins instead of avatars, right? Like they decide actually we want to use that word instead. It can just tweak it, right? And the AI twin will just adapt and read the ad copy slightly differently for the next episode, rather than have to get him in to do a recording where he needs to record the whole thing again, because the one word is going to look out of place if he just says the new word and has to have it cut into the...
Exactly.
So I think from that perspective, it's really interesting. The conversations I've had with a couple of football clubs, it's along a similar line. So like, for example, and this is particularly interesting in examples where the club owns some of the player IP, and so they can do more flexible things. But basically, like, the idea would be that, let's say, I don't know, you start the season without a jersey sponsor and then you get a jersey sponsor, you have to now go and rephotograph all of the players again. So that's like time out of training or time out of the day to go and get all the photos taken again. Also, from a sponsorship perspective, you might want to do something really reactive in the moment because a player, an unlikely player maybe, scores a winning goal in a match. And so you want to use him in your next ad campaign or in the ad immediately following the match. But you might not have anything pre-recorded with that specific player because you didn't know that he was going to be the breakout star or that he was going to be the one that scores the winner. This would allow you to kind of like substitute in the relevant player or the relevant players to the content based on like what's just happened on the pitch. So you can suddenly create way more content for sponsors, but also just in your own like club created content. And then the other part to this, which I think is especially interesting when we're speaking to some of these companies that create like AI twins, and where sport, I guess, is a particularly compelling incubator for this kind of technology, is that in almost any other environment, like basically outsourcing it to AI would be seen as a negative, right? So H&M did a campaign where they replaced the models with AI twins of the models, and the models, I think, still got compensated for the AI model, but obviously it was less. And so the pushback there is like, you're replacing the model's work. Whereas football players don't want to be in the content most of the time. They definitely don't want to be doing like the commercial shoots. So if you can say to them, you don't have to anymore, like you don't have to turn up, you don't have to spend 4 hours with us doing a photo shoot and getting the exact right photo. You can just sign this, or you can just press a button that says that, yes, I consent to that digital version of me being used in this specific format. And you just get like pinged if they want to use it in a new way to approve or decline. Then you're saving a load of time, and the messaging from the rights holder or the athlete or the brand is we're actually improving the performance of our players because they're able to spend more time recovering and training versus like on commercial shoots. So actually you can bring in like a human well-being argument for it against.
Good twist.
So that's where I think it's kind of interesting, because it's like it's one of the only environments where it would be seen as a positive that you're replacing this work, because it's not work that they want to do, and it's also not work the fans want the athletes to do, because they would rather the athlete was, how often do footballers get told to stick to football? Well, now they can, because they don't have to worry about being at the commercial shoot or traveling over to wherever to take a few photos and then travel back.
I do think the one piece that is, to your point, it's kind of flipped, is that I think you need sponsors on board with not getting the person that they're paying for, albeit less, in the shoot itself.
Yeah. I guess the counter argument is you're not getting the authentic version, but you're getting a lot more flexibility in terms of the content you can create and the amount of variations of content you can create, versus like you have 3 hours to get everything you want, and that's your lot for the season, and then like, you're stuck with whatever you've got. So it's probably a bit of give and take on both sides. And then I guess the other part to this that I think is kind of interesting is like you've got these models that are just like allowing you to create digital imagery of players or athletes or celebrities that haven't necessarily consented to giving their IP or likeness to that model, and the use cases are kind of unguarded in that like there's not like official guardrails on a lot of it. So like it might get the sponsor on the shirt wrong, or it might get the position of the logo wrong, or whatever it is, right? If you're just using like a typical AI model versus like a model that's like directly created by the club. So I think another way that would be really interesting is to create like an official portal on the website that allows you to create certified imagery that's been like approved and has like much stricter guardrails with certain players or with certain IP that the club has. So for example, it's like you can get a photo, you can go on the website, you can log in, you can upload a photo of yourself, and it'll be like a photo of you with the manager holding the trophy, for example. It's like certified by the club as like approved imagery. It would allow the club to then own that digital inventory and say like, well, the perimeter boards in the background will definitely be X brand, or the logo on the manager's jacket will definitely be the most up-to-date one. It won't be one from a previous season. So I think that's kind of interesting. Like this kind of like almost like creating like a content creation playground for your fans that's got like a little bit more IP protection than like the open web has.
This podcast is produced by O6, but more than just being a production partner, they're also active members of the Sports Pundit community. Having seen the work they're doing across the industry up close, working with leading F1 teams and Premier League clubs, as well as top creators, I'm so delighted to now have them on board and helping to elevate this show to a new level.
You just said something that I also think is a decent idea too, where not only can you create a lot of new content, but it also refreshes an archive for sponsors, for fun fan engagement. Like I think we may have talked about this in the past, but imagine, for example, if you're a new jersey sponsor, not only are you getting all of the broadcast and current angles or whatever, but what if you said, for all of the archive footage on website or official Premier League, archived library of games, your jersey is on our games there too, or your logo is on our jerseys and everything. And you instantly 4X or whatever, multiply your inventory for sponsors in a bunch of ways. And then you could do things like, create best 11s with other certified AI twins and do things like that too. But the sponsor inventory side is very interesting to me. And you open up a huge amount of new inventory for all of the archived content that you own, which is cool.
Yeah. I think the idea of like remastering like archive footage as well to be like current kit or like current broadcast standards would also probably create maybe additional appreciation of the quality of some of the older footage.
Really.
Sometimes when stuff's like grainy or whatever, it like almost dilutes people's perception of
Totally.
quality. So it could be kind of interesting to see what you could do if you were able to own that. I'm curious whether because people can get quite attached to like the legacy sponsors.
Totally.
Like for example, there's like, I think most clubs will have like one or two sponsors that like they think very fondly of, and like the retro kits are all made to be that specific sponsor. So like ones that come to mind are like Liverpool and Carlsberg.
I was literally about to say it.
Or
Exactly.
like Newcastle and like Newcastle Brown Ale, like it's quite like a classic. So I wonder whether there's an opportunity there. Like,
But isn't that similar to what you were just saying about imagine you take a photo with the trophy and a coach and you're not actually there. It's actually driving interest in something else too, whether it's the original retro kit or wanting to go to the stadium and actually getting a picture with the trophy.
Yeah. No, I think you could do it. I'm curious. Like, I think for the use cases where it's like you're saving players time because they don't need to create the content, there's like a really strong narrative with the fans to be like, hey, we're outsourcing this, which means our players don't have to worry about it, which is going to give us all this extra time to do training and recovery. And you can tell a nice narrative and a nice story. And I think also the players probably are more likely to sign up to something like that if they know that it's being controlled in a very orderly way, but also that they no longer have to commit so much time and energy to showing up for shoots. So I think they could definitely buy into that. I think on the archive side, I'm curious, and it's only it's not to say we shouldn't do it or it shouldn't be explored. It's more just to say, like, I wonder if there would be fan pushback if you were a new sponsor and you came in and suddenly instead of like Carlsberg being on the shirt, there's some crypto brand or some betting brand on the shirt, right? But like maybe there's a way to do it more tastefully where like the shirt is the same, but like the perimeter boards of the LEDs, like
Totally.
there might have even been LEDs back then, but like LEDs are almost like artificially integrated into the old stadium, and the new sponsors are like visible on the LEDs or something. There's probably like different ways and different levels you could kind of like integrate as a partner. But it's definitely, I really like the fact that you brought up the archive because it opens up a whole host of opportunities tied to an asset that a lot of clubs, not every club has it because they think sometimes it's league owned rather than club owned, but in some instances, it's an asset that clubs own to some extent, but have done very little to monetize and have very little means to monetize. So if they can integrate it somehow into the LLMs and it allows you to create fun and engaging new bits of content, like you could also have a situation where like the fan replaces one of the players in like an iconic goal, right? And it's like it's an iconic goal, but now the assist is made by the fan, right? And it's like a mini
Or
video.
to your point about remastering, it doesn't even have to be replacing anything, but like if you're able to remaster a bunch of iconic historic footage, you probably now open yourself up to a lot new ideas around content series. You could do watch alongs or watch backs, and it instantly becomes, to your point, a lot more watchable when it's not grainy and it feels a lot more modern.
Yeah, we've moved a million miles from the initial idea, but I'm enjoying it still nonetheless. But like another thing that you've just made me think of, which is slightly even more of a tangent, is like I also love the idea that you could create models basically of like two iconic teams and then you could play them against each other, right? So like it could be like, I don't know, the current debate, and I think this is a silly debate because I think, and this is exactly why these debates work, but like it's like Man United 2018 versus like the current Arsenal team, right? Like who would win?
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot of pushback that the Man United 18 would win. But you know, that's the whole point, right? Like that's the whole point of the argument. I'm like, you immediately fall into a trap of being like, oh, it'll obviously be that side. But that would be quite a fun thing you could play out. Or you could even have it as like, it could be the Arsenal Invincibles team versus the current Arsenal team, right? And Arsenal host that on their website, and it's like a new interactive thing you can watch.
And there's something more engaging about that than what historically has been the only way to do that, which is, if it's even possible, which is like a video game version.
Yeah.
and you could make it much more of a spectacle. And yeah, you could stream that. You could bring in fun commentators from both members of the team. Like there's a lot of really fun things you could do if it becomes like honestly just more watchable.
Yeah.
That is a tangent. You're right.
I don't know how we got onto AI twins from fan creators initially, but I feel like we've bulked out your pitch.
That is quite a pitch. I mean, honestly, yeah, I'm into it now.
Yeah.
I think we got there from volume of content to then AI to then. Why don't we go to yours? Because I know we don't have a ton of time left.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so my pitch is more focused around sponsorship, leveraging grassroots participation as like a form of fan engagement. So
that's familiar.
Yeah, so I might have shared this idea with you before, but I don't think I've shared it on the podcast. But anyway, the idea was basically prompted. I played a match against a team called Northampton Saints that happened to share the name of the professional rugby team. The cricket team isn't a professional team. It's just a team that play in the Northampton leagues. But because they're called Northampton Saints and Northampton Saints are sponsored by Cinch, they're also sponsored by Cinch, which just so happened at the time to be the front of shirt partner of the England Test cricket team as well. So their whites looked very similar to the England like Test cricket kit because they have the same like front of shirt partner basically as the England team, which got me thinking because you literally spend the entire day like staring at the opposition's kit, right? Because you're playing against them. So it's like a lot. Like first I was like, there can't be many ads out there where like the engagement, albeit of a very small minority, but a very engaged minority in that they're playing the sport, are like staring at this brand that's like on the other person's kit. And so my idea was basically a mix of both that insight, but then also the insight that most cricket clubs are run by, amateur club teams are run by volunteers. And so they don't necessarily have any idea what sponsorship looks like, how to commercialize a sports club or a cricket club in this case. And so like basically leveraging those two insights, what if there was a situation where using Cinch in this example, but you could apply this in other ways. If Cinch said, we're going to sponsor the England cricket team, but we're also going to create a grassroots fund. And basically clubs will be able to apply for sponsorship at a club level. They'll be able to kind of like fill out some sort of application form, which gets approved, which is based on number of like paid members that they have within the club, but also like number of like teams that they put out within like officially recognized leagues by the ECB. So you can't manipulate it too much. And the idea would be that based on, you'd create some sort of mechanism that means like, I don't know, if you've got 500 members within your cricket club and you've got, 8 teams that play on a Saturday across men's and women's, including, 5 men's teams and 3 women's teams, for example, you're then eligible to receive like X amount of sponsorship from Cinch, and you just have to put their logo on the front of your shirt, right? So you just get your kit printed with their logo on. So it's completely opt-in or opt-out. Like you don't have to, but it's like there for clubs that don't want to go and source their own sponsorship. It would create a benchmark in the market in terms of like what the front of shirt is worth, which would then actually just be helpful for you if you're a volunteer network of people that doesn't have any idea what it's worth. And then from the brand's perspective, it would give them like broad visibility across the country, because as well as being visible when you watch England on TV, you could go down to random local cricket grounds all around the country and you'd see Cinch in loads of places. So it would like really double down the kind of like brand association of the brand plus the sport and like how they're making an impact. And then for the players that are actually wearing it, your affinity towards that brand is going to be through the roof, because like there's not much more personal than like, I don't know, the club kit that you're wearing, because they're literally supporting your local team and you're wearing it on yourself, right? So it becomes, I think, quite an interesting opportunity. And I don't think there's any example currently, at least in the UK, maybe there is in the US, and there definitely isn't at a national level. Maybe there is at like a club level where like a club's been sponsored and then grassroots teams within that FA or whatever have been sponsored. But I think there's a big opportunity there for the right brand.
I'm trying to think. Because I was just about to ask, is there an example of any sponsor saying like, we basically want to own the sport from the pro level to the grassroots academy community level? I don't know if there is.
Yeah, so the only example I can think of, which isn't quite the same, is McDonald's sponsored the FA, I think. And then they also sponsored like one of the academy programs. And so they appeared on like all the academy, like, I don't know exactly what it's called, like the Little Stars program or whatever. They all had, regardless of which team you played for, you'd be wearing a bib which would have the McDonald's logo on it and like football for all written on it, whatever. That's the best I can think of in terms of like a kind of like nationwide kind of campaign at a grassroots level. But that's more kind of like something top down from the governing body where they're like providing the kit and it's got the logo on, rather than integrating themselves directly into many local clubs. The only other one I can think of is like the current sponsor on my local cricket club is Kingfisher Beer, which is like a Indian lager. And their strategy is all based around the fact that like they want people to drink Kingfisher outside of Indian restaurants, which is basically the only place people drink Kingfisher. Part of the agreement is you have to have it on tap in the pavilion. Like, so Kingfisher's on tap at our cricket club. And then they pay out like a set amount basically, and they have like a mass program at like a kind of recreational level where lots of clubs can basically sign up. And as long as they commit to having Kingfisher on tap, they get like X amount of like funding basically from Kingfisher. But the difference there is that Kingfisher doesn't have the top down visibility from like being also on the national team shirt.
I'm trying to think of what would even be a relative comparison in the US. So like, again, you're missing the sort of middle piece here, but to stick with beer, obviously Bud Light plays very heavily in the NFL. Like, there's no jersey sponsors, obviously, but like they're all over commercials throughout the NFL season. And then when you get down to, again, it's different because this is just essentially co-ed intramurals, but Bud Light sponsors a lot of intramural flag football leagues, completely separate, but you are starting to say, if we talk to the same people that love watching football, let's also surround when they're playing flag. But there's that's still very regional, and it's still not entirely like they're just going to the intramural league in Boston or DC and saying, we'll throw you some money. And then usually the whole point of those intramural leagues is that you play your game and then there's the sponsor bar afterwards and you get Bud Light specials or whatever. So it's similar-ish, but there's still there's a gap in that middle area where they're reaching out to the fans and the people that they're trying to reach, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe the governance structure in US sport just doesn't quite lend itself the same way as I think
it's just not connected the same way.
Yeah. Because like with the UK, there's so many ways you could connect it. Like thinking again to cricket here, but like the ECB at the top have the commercial relationship, obviously, with the England national teams. But then also all of the counties are under the ECB's control. So at the county level, they're under the control. And then you've got all of the grassroots have to be affiliated back to ECB and be registered in order to play in the competitive leagues. And then they also have a digital app where all of the scores are on the same app. So if I'm playing for a club near Milton Keynes and my brother's playing for a club in London, I can check the score of my game on the app, but I can also go and check his score, and it's all within the same digital ecosystem. Wow. And like I can also check my dad's game. He's playing, like he still plays in Portsmouth in like the whatever team. So I can just go and check his score. So I can check on like my friends' games. I can also check on other games happening within my league. So like if we're second in the league and we want to check how the team that's above us is doing, you can like click and see in real time the scores because it's all done digitally in one app. So if you were this brand, it's a pretty cool like digital asset to own. Like, and then
And sorry, who is the owner here?
the like England Cricket Board.
It's like the England Cricket version of the FA, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, they essentially have all of the digital scoring like within an app called Play Cricket, which they own and operate.
So it would be like if flag football, which obviously the NFL wants to make a big deal, was completely operated and run through the NFL.
Yeah, and then you could go on like an NFL flag app and see the scores of any game in any league.
Versus how it is now is someone may play for Volo Sports, someone might play for, they're all private companies that do intramural sports in various cities, basically.
Yeah. So the reason I think that that's relevant and why I brought it up is that it would then allow you that digital touch point as well, because you could have Cinch on all the shirts, but then like you could also have digital inventory where, I don't know, Cinch could show up. Any club that's like Cinch affiliated, it could have like Cinch branding like attached in some way. And so like you're then like doubling down on it because you've got the digital visibility across all of this side of things too.
That feels very far in the US, but it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's my pitch.
I just don't know if there's another good example of whether it's a brand or, like we've said probably in the past, a league or a federation that owns top down.
Yeah, I think it's probably a more common structure in the UK. So I would imagine like I've used cricket as the example because it's where I got the idea, but it could have been like, I think the FA could probably do something similar from like it would obviously skip out the professional clubs, but you could do it from a grassroots perspective that like the FA has it, and then all of the county FAs, which is where all of the like grassroots football happens, could also offer it out to like the grassroots clubs, and they could choose on whether to have it or not. And I think also it would be kind of interesting because you could maybe tie it into the FA Cup sponsorship in some way, where it's like, as well as getting the naming rights of the FA Cup, like, do you want to create this fund where, you know, you've got a load of like younger players or whatever that are then wearing like Emirates on their kit, or wearing Adobe on their kit, depending on, you know, the male and female naming rights have been split.
Do you think because I don't know this at all, the grassroots level is all volunteer, you said?
Pretty much.
So how does that connect to I'll keep using the FA, but like the England Cricket? Is that basically just volunteers inputting into that app? Is there any sort of like operational pipeline?
Yeah, so on the scoring side, it's essentially like everyone now scores digitally anyway. So essentially what they do is like you log in and then you're scoring in real time, like via your laptop. And then that's basically being uploaded to the internet in real time. It's volunteers in terms of the clubs are generally volunteer based. I don't know if that's true of every single like grassroots team, but in general, like most of the cricket clubs you come across, it will be like parents and people in the community, whatever, that are running it, and they're running it as like a community or like a volunteer committee basically, and they're basically providing expertise where they can, but like you might not have anyone at your club that's ever sold a sponsorship before. Like I'm obviously like exposed to a lot of people that have worked in sponsorship, but like there would be a lot of people that haven't been exposed to sponsorship ever. So
well, the reason I ask is, is there a world where that sponsor provides infrastructure that's needed, or like a pot of money that is used for certain things to tighten up the pipeline from the bottom to the top?
Yeah, so that's been done a little bit. So there's like NatWest, who are like a bank in the UK, have done a sponsorship before with the ECB, where like they sponsor something called NatWest Ground Force Day. It's basically like NatWest provide a load of infrastructure stuff, which might be like tools for groundwork, or it might be like certain stuff around like the site screens that need fixing or whatever, right? So there's elements of that already exist. essentially the thing tying it all back to the ECB is that if you want to play in a competitive league as a club, you basically have to meet certain like safety and governance protocols to be like ECB accredited, and you can't play in the competitive leagues unless you are. So that's essentially why everyone filters into one system. Whereas I guess in the US, it's a bit more private market. So you maybe don't have that in the same way, but that would also then make it way harder to do something like this, because I guess the challenge would be this needs to be positioned in a way where it's like the sponsor is helping the local club, not the sponsor is using volunteers and taking advantage.
Exactly. Fascinating. I mean, you just opened up a whole side of grassroots sport that I barely even know existed.
Well, I guess that's the advantage of us being opposite sides of the pond, because it means we're bringing perspectives that are maybe slightly different from our own experiences.
I hope so. I think that's great. Yeah, that's super interesting. Well, then that means I can save some more pitches for next time.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Pundit podcast, kindly produced by the amazing team at 06. I'll include more information about the guests and the topics covered in the show notes. Head to sportspundit.co to find previous editions, access the newsletter, and to sign up for our WhatsApp group and see upcoming social events in cities around the world. See you again soon.